Welcome back. About 200 contract nurses at George Mukhari Academic Hospital in Ga-Rankuwa, Tshwane are struggling to make ends meet. The nurses, who are on fixed-term contracts, argue that they didn't receive salaries in the past 2 months. And the fact that they are on contract, that makes it impossible to threaten a strike. For more on this, we are now joined by DENOSA Gauteng Secretary Bongani Mazibuko. Mr. Mazibuko, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, the contract nurses who have not received their payments for the last 2 months, when did their employment with the Dr. George Mukhari Hospital begin?
Good evening, and thank you for having us. These nurses were actually previously employed by Dr. George Mukhari Academic Hospital. And these contracts were renewed because their previous contracts ended on the 31st of March this year. Now, what was supposed to happen is that when those contracts ended, new contracts for the beginning of the 1st of April up until the 31st of March next year were supposed to have been signed. So, in essence, then it's just a continuation of work that has been ongoing. But we are surprised that Dr. George Mukhari has actually then failed these nurses in this regard.
And in accordance to the hospital CEO, why are these salaries still unpaid?
It seems that the problem lies with HR department. HR department at the hospital has not been able to send the documents that are required to be processed by eGov timelessly. We are aware that the current HR person who's there is acting. So there's this indecisiveness when people are acting in these positions, and therefore we think that that could be the reason. But there is no reason that justifies people not getting paid for more than 2 months, especially because these are people who were previously on the system. So to us, we started talking with the Department of Health, and all other people have made arrangements to make sure that their staff whose contracts ended on the 31st, everything was in place and those people were getting paid. So to have one institution whereby this is happening or on such a protracted length of time, it's unacceptable.
And this is 200 nurses that are sitting without pay for the last 2 months. I mean, in a letter dated the 7th of June, the acting CEO proposed an interim solution of moving some of these nurses to be permanently appointed into posts and vacancies that were still to be made available. But to the nurses' dismay, they then discovered that some of these posts that are currently unavailable were actually being advertised by the Gauteng Department of Health for this hospital. What's the explanation behind that?
Well, unfortunately, I think the department is the only one that can give us an explanation on that. But as I said, previously, we've always said this, and we are on record having saying that there is a dire shortage of nurses in the province, and hospitals are just not able to cope with the influx of patients. And what we expect is that those nurses who are on contract should be given a permanent post at some stage. And to know that there are permanent positions available, and yet the department is not prioritizing the nurses who are already in the system is unacceptable. So in our view, we believe that what should be happening is that these nurses who are on these COVID contracts should be the ones who are prioritizing, making sure that they fill in those gaps so that the people of Gauteng can get the healthcare service that they need and deserve from these particular nurses, because they're already in the system and they are willing to do the work.
I mean, these 200 nurses, are they still continuing to come to work? And if so, how are they coping without being paid for over 2 months?
I think that shows the caliber of nurses that we've got in this country, and but in particular that particular institution. Having not been paid for 2 months and that you still continue coming to work, people are borrowing money and they are trying to make ends meet. They are doing their best, but one thing that we know and that we've seen is that they are committed to their jobs and to the people of Gauteng to make sure that service delivery does not suffer as much as they are being they are dissatisfied and there's an injustice that is being protracted against them by the department. Because if you look at it, there's no one who would be able to work in this current economic climate for 2 whole months without getting paid. I mean, there's fees to be paid, there's rent to be paid. Other people are even having cars that they need to pay for. So there are disruptions in this regard. But we are engaging with the Department of Health at the provincial level, and we are hoping that this can be rectified and be finalized as soon as possible so that this injustice does not continue and the workers can get the benefit that they work for.
Has this hampered on service delivery at the hospital in any way so far?
The service delivery at Dr. George Mukhari and all other institutions is always threatened or affected by the shortage of nurses. We know that in particular in places like Tembisa, there are issues there whereby patients are either stuck in casualty for up to 2 weeks, and also received complaints about challenges at Far East Rand Hospital. And Dr. George Mukhari is also not immune to those challenges. What we are saying is that the government and the department, with those posts that the Premier had promised to say that they're advertising, I saw that there are few posts for nurses. What we need to make sure is that those posts are filled, and then we get the nurses in those positions which are available, so that those people can be able to get to attend to service delivery challenges in the province.
You mentioned earlier that there's already talks at a provincial level with the Gauteng Health Department. Can you let us in on what answers you're getting in as far as when these nurses will be paid, and if ever some of these vacancies will be made available as soon as possible?
The vacancies have been made available at the moment. They are part of those GPG vacancies that were advertised by the Premier, which people can apply for from the 16th. And then what we are getting is that the provincial office, which is the central department and the Department of Health, has gotten involved to try and facilitate and make sure that these nurses are getting their salaries soon. When I engaged yesterday on Thursday, with some of the officials at the Department of Health, I was told that I should be making follow-up on Monday so that we can try and at least get a concrete date to say that have all these documents been logged, and then how far is that? So by Monday, we should be able to give our members an update to say what is happening and when should they expect their salaries to be paid.
All right, Mazibuko, thank you so much for your time this evening, and we do hope that this will be resolved as soon as possible. That was DENOSA Gauteng Secretary Bongani Mazibuko speaking to us there about the 200 nurses that are still sitting unpaid after 2 months.